A grassroots global organization dedicated to innovations in youth empowerment and advocacy, a catalyst for change, defending the present while focusing on the future. That's Future Focus Empowerment Institute International, and that's coming up next on Carib Nation. Hello, welcome to Carib Nation. I'm Doris Dean. Born in Trinidad and Tobago, Future Focus Empowerment Institute International partners with global leaders on a mission to make poverty eradication a political priority through youth empowerment and strategic advocacy. Joining me to explore the work of this organization are its founder and president, Crystal Cameo, Ambassador Felicia Scotland, delegate to the Commonwealth of Dominica Future Focus Global Ambassadors Cohort, that's a mouthful, and Dr. Astrid Webb, President, Healthy Kinder International LLC, and Future Focus Award recipient. Thank you all for joining me, ladies, and welcome to Carib Nation.
Thank you for having us.
Let me start with you, Crystal, of course, as the founder and president. Where did this idea come from? And how did you go about bringing it to fruition?
Okay, first of all, I can't say it was an idea that came about. I think it's a seed that have been planted in me from a very young age. I've been in youth work in the space of Trinidad and Tobago for quite some time, always on the grassroots level. In 2013, I entered into the political arena, contesting for the local government elections. But the passion didn't start there, it started way before that. However, not having an understanding as to how business work and how to actually curate the ideas and create a platform to execute. I had no knowledge of that prior to venturing to the United States. I came to the United States in 2015, actually, to pursue higher education. And on my academic journey, I met a number of people, but one person that actually, well, I'll speak to one person that actually created the platform of which Future Focus was actually registered in New York State in 2020, after having an encounter with the then ambassador to the UN, Her Excellency Penelope Beckles, who is the Honorable Penelope Beckles of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, who sits as the housing minister at present. She invited me to the CSW 65, where I was the youth speaker at the Commission on the Status of Women's, their Women Forum at the United Nations in March 2018. I've recognized very, very shy individual, humanitarian by nature. So I look very outgoing and social, but I'm an introvert most times. I took it as a really good opportunity, not just to be on a global platform, but use the platform to encourage and empower other young people. I came from a very disenfranchised background. I came from the eastern end of Port of Spain, East Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago, where you would often hear nothing good comes from behind the bridge. And I wanted to, I didn't want to carry that label throughout my life. I didn't want my children to have that title. I didn't want my community to be stigmatized like that. So I decided to do all that I can to change that negative labeling that was literally placed there for most of my life, from all of my life. That's what we would hear most times. But entering into the United Nations was a whole new world for me. It was an honorable and humbling experience. And I say humbling because I was the only youth speaker on that panel. And I've recognized that, oftentimes we are used for the sake of tokenism. Leaders would say, let's put them there and give them the space for the public to see that we're using them and, we're getting them involved. But there won't any real opportunities when we get platforms. And I'm not interested in the ceremonial aspect of youth activism or youth participation. I'm interested in
the scene.
Yes. I really want the grassroots feeling, real opportunities, because we'll often hear the term, the statement, the youth is the future, the youth is the future of the world, they're the future leaders. But how could we be the future when our present is compromised? When the decisions that are being made are on the level of the hierarchy and it's not trickling down for those that has to take up the mantle to lead. So I decided to build my own table with the networks that I obtained at the United Nations. I decided to build my own table and invite young people from all over the globe to join that table and this movement. We are not here to dethrone anyone. The government has their work to do, but I do believe that we as individuals and as a global community, we have our part to play, and hence the reason why we are so committed to the vision that is future focused. And it's ironic that I did not make this up. This came to me, and I believe and in my heart that it has been a calling on my life. I don't do this because of the public recognition. I do what I do because of the passion of the vision. I have a 13-year-old son, and I need to know that the world is ready for him, and that the young people that I am mentoring, and not myself alone, but my team, people like Dr. Astral Webb, who understands the importance of investing and succession planning, because we're not going to be here forever. And I may not be alive to see the tree at its full bloom based on the seeds that I'm planting now. But I know my son is going to reap. He's going to participate. He's going to partake of those fruits that I may not be able to see, but the seed is planted now. And that's my main focus. It's really not about dethroning anyone or trying to pick up space and competition. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the ability for these young people to know that, hey, there are people out there that are looking at you. You are worthy. You deserve, and you can do everything that you can to make your life better. No, it doesn't matter of the city, whatever circumstance or your background. I've every meeting I have with one of them, I will always tell them of a quote. I'll always quote something that will have them thinking and will motivate them to go forward. And it's a quote by Mark Twain when he said, the two most important days of a person's life. It's the day that they were born and the day they found out why. Most times we go into the school, we jump into academics, and we are flustered with the maths and the English and the chemistry and the biology, which is good. It helps us, prepares us for that professional aspect, for that career-oriented and career-driven pathways. But do we understand who we are and why we are here? Why are we existing? Why are we living? Where did we come from? What is our true calling? What is our purpose in life? And we recognize that our young people are missing the much needed life skills. When they're finished with college, they are intelligent academically, but to face the world and life skills, they are crippled. They don't know what to do. Hence the reason why you're talking, you'll hear them speaking about youth unemployment, the youth unemployment rate. Hey, it's about you tapping into you and your creativity to become an entrepreneur, to literally nurture and, churn the ground of who you are in order to produce. Because what's going to happen? We're going to die, and then all the rich ideas, all the innovation, we just continuously commit dreamicide, which is the unintentional killing of your dreams. And we don't want that to happen, because we know there's so much inside of them. And if we don't create the platforms for them to really showcase and show the world what they have, then what is our real purpose? What are we really doing as leaders? So it was against that background that this this was born, that this vision was born, was birthed, I should say. It took a while to come out because of my challenge with being in the public and wanting to speak. And, it's very challenging at times, but I understand that if I want to position these young people to really bring forth and see and harness the true potential that lies within, I need to show up, and I need to show up well.
Well, you obviously had a great opportunity and you took advantage of that at the right time. And that took some maturity and some foresight at that time to be able to grasp that opportunity. Astral Web, give me a little picture of what your organization does and how it plays into Future Focus.
Sure. So my organization is Healthy Kinder International LLC. And we really do, our mission is to promote healthy lifestyles for families. So we do this by trying to provide all the trainings, whether they're based on health literacy or cultural competency, really to address chronic diseases and educate individuals in the community about their own chronic conditions. But our focus is really primarily since the past 4 or 5 years based on mental health prevention, awareness and education around mental health issues. And one of the reasons that we provided that level of training, in my past, I've had the opportunity to train healthcare providers, over 3,000 of them across the United States. And I think the one part that we were missing in healthcare is linking the community patient education piece. So it didn't matter how much we manage patients with their high blood pressure or diabetes. If stress was a factor in their life, then we could not truly manage that patient. And so the piece that was missing is really helping patients to own the things they can do themselves. And that will only come through patient education and awareness. But listening to what the patients were advocating for, it bred a passion in me personally to make sure that I can empower that next generation, whether they were the youth leaders going into healthcare or the youth leaders in the communities. So partnering with an organization such as Future Focus Empowerment Institute International allowed me to do that, because you can hear that voice of, that they are clear, they understand what their future generation needs. In order for them to accomplish that, they need to be healthy, not just physically, but also mentally. That generation has suffered with so much in terms of community violence, setbacks, and negativity. And so they have an enormous amount of fear and anxiety. So when I heard Crystal talk about empowering the youth, no matter how much of a passion that you have inside of you, if you are inundated with the fear and anxiety to really perform, then the world will never see what the great seeds that these young people have. So I have, when I first learned about this organization, I've always tried to figure out how to partner. Almost every one of the youth ambassadors, if you ask them what are some of the major issues in their communities, they will all link it back to some mental health problem. So I recognized that I needed to be a viable partner for them, that we needed to do more in terms of mental health awareness. So ironically, we're doing the taping during the end of Mental Health Awareness Month, and they have really put this at the forefront of their platform. So not only did it allow us to address an issue, I heard one of the young people describe it as mental health is the cancer of our generation. Now that struck me as a healthcare professional. And for them to be able to identify it means that we need to address this. In the Caribbean region, it is a taboo to talk about mental health and mental illness. But we know that our young generation, they understand we have to address it. So coming out of the box, they have challenged me as well. How do we come out of the box and make sure that we could meet them halfway, that we can empower them? So I have done a lot of listening. And what we've done is try to incorporate everything that I know in terms of community engagement and empowerment and transferring it onto the youth. But more so, it's not just the mental health, it's really understanding that they are uniquely positioned to answer many of our global problems today. But they need to be put in that position of empowerment. They need to be influenced by us. And so I also not only just partner with them on an organizational standpoint, but I've taken interest in the leadership team of Future Focus. And now I'm trying to pour everything that I can to influence them to continue to be the leaders. You know, back in our days, Darius, where we were coming through, we didn't have many mentors empowering women to take charge and lead, right? And not only women, but certain men who have great qualities, but they may not have been from the status quo family, or they didn't have the position or go to the top-notch schools that we recognize. So they did not have an opportunity. But that's what Future Focus Empowerment Institute does. And that is what I love about this organization. And they're constantly growing. So for me to see firsthand just the relationship that we've had over, this is now the second year, but to see the progress, it is truly rewarding to see it. And I will continue to partner with them. Not only do I partner personally through my organization, but I've brought other organizations on as well to partner. And we have done a series of projects. One of them that just concluded was called the Open Circle. And it was truly an online community dialogue, which we did not broadcast live. You had to actually register to join the sessions because the issues were deep, they were personal. And we had individuals from different parts of the world. Well, Future Focus Empowerment, they partnered with us way beyond our expectation. And this, again, shows to the value of these young people. So we will continue to pour into them. But what we need more than anything are sponsors and support and be behind these organizations. These nonprofits, they're doing amazing things with limited resources. But imagine what they can do with the seeds that I've seen other nonprofits have. And yes, they look great marketing, but they don't have the value, the impact, or the effectiveness that organizations such as Future Focus has. So, that is something that I think we need to embrace in the Caribbean region to really pour into our young people, not only our time, our resources, our expertise, but we also need to invest into them and their projects and ideas.
As President Obama taught us, we can do so much more by working from the grassroots level. And I think that is something that we need to turn things around a little bit. Let me come to you, Ambassador Scotland, and find out, how did you get involved and what is your role as ambassador?
Okay, thank you again for having me. I recently got involved sometime earlier this year in about late February, March. I saw the Open Circle. I saw clips and videos, and I was very intrigued as to what was going on. I was very captivated that young people such as myself were having these kinds of discussions, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so I reached out to Future Focus. I sent several emails across several platforms, as Crystal can attest to, Instagram, email, etc., and even on their website, because I really wanted to get involved. And Crystal reached out to me. I had an interview, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I got to meet several of the key leaders in the organization. And I felt it was such a great fit from the top all the way to the bottom. And my role in this organization has advanced so quickly. I really thought I would just be a volunteer where I would help out in certain activities, because usually I'm based in Texas. So I really thought that my role would be very small, but Crystal has made sure that's not the case. she has me on like several projects. For example, right now I'm working with the COO and another ambassador to create a model United Nations simulation for our group. Basically, this group has UN status, and usually they attend the UN every year. However, due to COVID, that has not been the case for this year. And so we felt that it's a very good opportunity to give the ambassadors that training so that when the UN reopens, they are prepared or they are equipped with the necessary skills in order to make an impact there. And so right now I'm working on that simulation project, and it's supposed to begin in September to October for our ambassadors. Additionally, this group has given me the opportunity to sort of like fulfill ideas that I've had at the back of my mind. For example, I am a big advocate for sustainable agriculture. I come from a small rural agriculture community. And so even though right now I'm pursuing a PhD in material engineering and nanotechnology, agriculture has always been close to my heart. And so this group actually gave me the opportunity to start looking at how can I implement technology into agricultural practice, making it fun, making it more efficient, making it sustainable. And so these are just some of the opportunities that I've had so far joining in March with this organization. So it's been incredible so far. And I really look forward to seeing where it takes me and the group as a whole.
So have you been involved in any community efforts or community projects, either in Dominica, where you came from, or in Texas, where you are now, that would have?
Right now, it's not community based with Future Focus. It's more like how you'd say project design, development, and hopefully implementation. Like I said, I recently joined in March, so I have not, been in community-based projects. However, we have had like several like projects that we are planning to execute. For example,
I was looking
recently
about
go ahead.
what you did before getting involved.
Yes, before, definitely. I've always been, when I did undergrad, I was a student ambassador as well. And so I would always be involved in whatever project that was offered on campus, whether it was mentorship to a freshman or a camp advisor or whatnot, you name it, I was there, I've done it. And so it just came naturally to transition with Future Focus. But I think so far I've had more of a leadership delegation role rather than hands-on role. So it's been definitely a change for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Crystal, how did you go about selecting ambassadors? You have ambassadors, first of all, among how many countries, across how many countries?
The last time we checked, and I can look for clarification from Felicia because she directly deals with them, was 55 countries. The last time we checked, across Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, Europe, also Asia. And how did I go about the recruitment process? It was not a recruitment process. There's an actual detailed program that they go through. All of these, over 500 of them right now, I had personally encountered with, and over the years, I would have mentored them personally. With Felicia and her consistency, I saw her first message on Facebook, then it popped up on Instagram, then it came through my email, and then it came through the website. So I recognized that this person had a serious interest in the program. And, coming from the Commonwealth of Dominica, it actually took a special place in our heart, seeing that our CEO, she is from the Commonwealth of Dominica. And she's also the co-founder of the organization. And we both met in college, at Monroe College in New York. So it was a good fit. She was very shy. She did not want to be out there at all. So I told her, I said, okay, that's what you're saying to me, but I'm going to show you different. Because I know what she, just having the conversations with her, one-on-one conversations, I know what she had within. I could have seen it. And I think that is a God-given gift that I have to actually see the potential and literally position them so that they can grow in those different aspects. It's not because of anything else. It's definitely because she could have done it. And I know that she would have loved what she does and do. And she is loving what she's doing right now. Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah, I noticed you also seem to focus on regions of people of color. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's where most of the issues are, I'm sure, when you look around the world today. One of the things that I found interesting is, as in what you were saying, over the years, we often put young people aside. We say, as you said, that they're the people of the future, but we don't do much to groom them or help them to take on the future. But I think that is beginning to change. One of the two things, there are more women in power these days, and that mentoring, empathetic nature is coming through. And so I think that there will probably be more of this type of change in most countries. Having my own Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, I'm so proud of her, because I remember when she started out as the youngest minister in the entire world, I think at the time. She was 20-something years old. And she took that on with such strength, such focus, and has never looked back. So I think that when we look around, as a friend of mine says, we're entering the age of Aquarius, where women are definitely emerging. Just recently, Felicia, what's her name? Alicia Keys has partnered with Deepak Chopra. They're doing a meditation series where they are focusing on feminine power, the strength and the importance of feminine power in bringing unity to the world. So I think that you're just in the right place at the right time, on the cusp of something very, very interesting. And it's great to see the seriousness that with young people and that you have taken on to do this. And when you look at the work that people like Astral have been doing over a period of time, this just fits perfectly. So I'd like to go back to you, Astral, and talk a little bit more about some of the projects that just recently we have seen in the news, which is so devastating, that violence against women seems to become an epidemic, especially across the Caribbean. I remember many years ago interviewing a gentleman who was the head of an organization called Men Against Violence Against Women. And I wondered, when I saw that story, I wondered whether that organization still exists, because I think we need the help of men to change the course of things. And when you talk about mental health, Astral, please talk to me about what this does to people in the long run.
Absolutely. In fact, thank you so much for wanting to address domestic violence. So sometimes we call it gender-based violence in the Caribbean, right? Because it is probably, I think, the number one domestic mental health issue that we're seeing as amidst this pandemic. We knew it was there before, but never have we seen the number of incidences as we have seen now. The rate has almost quadrupled, 5 times, 10 times the number. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic and we've been in lockdown, many of the women have not been able to go out and get the help that they need. The call centers have been inundated with how many calls a day they can take. But because of the pandemic, even maybe the men, and sometimes the abuser is a woman as well, right? And we have seen that More individuals have been drinking more at home. They've been frustrated not being able to go out, not being able to go to the beach or go to exercise or so forth, hang out with their friends. And so they take it out on the person who is closest to them. But we know it's a detrimental impact because not only does it cause trauma for the woman, it also intensifies the mental health, anxiety, and depression on children. And 90% of domestic violence cases, 90% of the children actually witness it firsthand. They may not say anything. They hear it, they see it, and they see the bruises and the scars from it. And sometimes they feel almost helpless that they can't help their mother or, aunt or grandmother or whoever is going through the abuse. So I think it's a discussion we need to have across the board. I think the greatest supporters to make sure that we have the discussions around these are our men. In the Caribbean, which is a little bit different from here in the United States, we talk more openly, we see the visual signs and so forth here in the United States, and we know it's no longer going to be tolerated. But in the Caribbean, we are a much slower journey for that to happen. And part of it is the stigma, the abuse, the shame. I'm going to bring shame on my family. Sometimes it's the family members who say, don't talk about this. You're going to bring shame on us. And so they almost make the victim feel as though she should feel guilty for stating that this is happening. Well, we have partnered, both Future Focus and myself have partnered with an organization called Women of Substance. And they have just launched in March 9th, International Women's Day. They actually launched a program, so their Purple Bench program. So they now have these Purple Benches that are currently, it's in Trinidad and Tobago, but they're highlighting things like domestic numbers to call, right? Or if you are in help, if you need help, where to go. And so the CEO, Ms. Mars, Onika Mars, is herself a survivor of domestic violence. And she's been very open about her story to empower other women. So she's working there locally with the various ministers of various sectors across the islands. But she's also had a number of requests and conversations with others from the other Caribbean islands. So we expect to see that this is one of the projects that will be expanded across. But the reason we have to bring the awareness, we have to about the issue is that for too long we have pushed it under the rug, and we now need to educate everyone. Domestic violence and mental health go hand in hand. There's no way to separate the two. Because we don't want to talk about mental health issues, we don't talk about domestic violence. So we have to raise awareness around the issues. We have to educate people about the signs and symptoms. And you'll be surprised, Darius, or you may not be surprised, many of the victims are our most educated and successful women in the Caribbean region because they don't talk about it, right? And so...
Go ahead. I was going to say, immediately as you started talking about the Caribbean, my mind went to one of the first interviews I did over 30 years ago for Women's History Month. And the woman was a judge who had suffered for so many years and had finally got the courage to talk about it. And she talked about the number of people at that level who wouldn't dare to raise the issue and talk about it. And she just suffered for so many years. And and that's one of the things that has perpetuated over the years in the Caribbean.
Correct. And it is the story. It should not have taken 30 years before we heard the other stories, right? So we know.
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
Exactly. And we have a significant amount of work to do, but we have to tear down these walls of stigma. We have to understand no one who is victimized deserves to be in that position. There's no one, all right, worthy of it. Even if you think there's a fault in a person, no one deserves that level of abuse, because domestic violence is not just physical, it's not just sexual, it's also verbal and emotional. And when you realize that you're impacting the children, you're impacting families, you're impacting, even that ability for that woman to go to work when you beat her down and she can't move, right? And unable to take care of herself. This impact will infiltrate our communities. I think we've seen it for a long time, but we don't do anything about it. So this is where we need our politicians to write the policies to make sure that we can advocate to end this violence, right? And we have to also make sure we have programs and services so that those who are victimized can get the help that they need. The ones who have survived it and have been able to leave because they had strong support systems or they had the courage to say no more. These are the individuals who also need services, especially mental health services. The trauma, leaving is one thing, but now you have to live with the trauma and replay those incidences over and over again. And we're seeing it's impacting our children as well. Because if, as a child, you've witnessed this form of abuse and you have your own depression and anxiety around it, even when you get into young adulthood and you start dating, you become, that abuser, because you never really, you don't know any other different example of how you're supposed to act in a relationship. But it's wrong because you've seen it happen. But because they've never gotten that support they needed, whether it was counseling or it's support from family members to let them know it's okay to talk about it and deal with the feelings, these individuals will continue to go on to be adults who struggle later on in life. And so the cycle never breaks. So we have to break down those walls of stigma. That's where it begins. And we have to understand that the next step is really knowing what the signs and symptoms look like so that those who are nonverbal about the issue, we can tell through those actions that those individuals need the help they need. It's the only way we're going to really address domestic violence and gender-based violence in the Caribbean region. So, I really, if there's anyone who's struggling with this too, I really encourage you to reach out to Women of Substance, because one of the things, if you go to their website, they have a number of resources and they are having the conversations with the other, regional Caribbean countries as well. So the hope is that eventually each country will have some kind of support for those who are in domestic violence situations.
Felicia, in terms of ambassadors, do you have an idea as to how many countries in the Caribbean are hands-on with this and really committed to making that change?
Okay, so we have about 480 ambassadors worldwide. I don't know the specific number for the Caribbean, but we have a number of islands active from the Bahamas all the way to Guyana. And so I think we have an ambassador in almost every speaking English-speaking Caribbean island for sure. Mm. And usually they are pretty hands-on with their local projects, yes.
And Crystal, as you said, your focus is trying to make sure that issues like these become priority in governments. Poverty and disempowerment and things like mental health and the lack of so many services. But over the years, the Caribbean, and this is my my own observation over the years, the Caribbean people become complacent and they just expect the government to do everything, to give them an answer to everything, or at least to sort it out. But we now have a generation of people who are obviously taking it into their own hands and deciding, we are not waiting on government. We can't wait for them to sort it out. Barbados has just launched the National Transformation Initiative, which I think is a brilliant idea that most countries in the Caribbean should be looking at, CARICOM should be looking at. One of the arms of that initiative is providing education across the board. They're partners with Coursera to provide free education, not only for those people who want to be doctors and lawyers, but to make the point that one does not have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or whatever, but there are other things that people can do with their hands, that there are ideas that young people have. And this whole thrust towards entrepreneurship, which is one of the things that I think more young people are focusing on because it gives them that opportunity of self-expression. Talk a little bit about what are the challenges of getting governments, and probably most specifically the Caribbean governments, to really put their money where their mouth is and turn their focus away from the fancy things, the things that get the news, to work on these issues that are going to help the next generation?
It has been pretty challenging tapping into government resources, and as you said clearly, we're really not interested, and the government is there to do what they can do, but as the citizenry, we have our own responsibilities, especially if we can see the issues and we know, we have an idea as to how to address it. Now, with these ambassadors, they are not only existing in an global organization, they are developing confidence, competence, and character through community engagement, education, and empowerment. And when I say education, I'm not talking about the formal education that takes place in the classroom. I'm talking about the informal education. What about financial literacy? What about mind, body, and soul? What about aligning yourself mentally and physically? What about career readiness and college prep, if that's what you want to do, or vocational school, as you mentioned, those that want to tap into the creative side of them. Not everyone wants to become a doctor, as you mentioned, and I agree with that. But what are the things that we are putting in place? I remember just about a month ago, we had a special convening of the cohorts on our talk show, Future Focus Fridays. And we had each ambassador, each delegate for the specific assigned countries, they were highlighting an issue with a possible solution. And take, for example, the ambassador to Antigua and Barbuda, she was indicating that the young people don't have an interest in skilled work. So if she was supposed to try to access a young person, a young plumber, she would not be able to have, because the market is so saturated because everybody's studying to be doctors and lawyers. But in terms of skilled work, there's a huge gap. And I found that to be very, very interesting. And now she's initiating a program to cultivate education, awareness, and change, because she's seeing that in the community, and in the long run, it's going to be an issue, because our plumbers, they will get old, they wouldn't be able to move as much, and then what's going to happen to the island, And these and a lot more things that we find our ambassadors are embarking on. Now we know we're in the month of mental health awareness month, and we have embarked on the period poverty campaign. I did not know that there was something called period poverty until these young people addressed it. And it's not so much not having access to the sanitary napkins. And this is not just happening in places like Africa that we deem third world. No, that Africa is a developing country. Sometimes they put out there what they want us to see, the bad parts of it, but there's a lot going on in Africa, and they're young, and they're empowered, and they're coming out and speaking up. And it's not so much about not having access to the sanitary napkins, but the education around it. I have my ambassador from Zimbabwe telling me, Miss Christopher, you know, I never even know about my period until I came to college in the city. She's 19. They thought that was something spiritual happening to them when the month comes. You know, her mother is in her 60s, and her mother don't know anything about nothing. And I'm here like, what? In the 21st century? You know, so yes, the government have a lot to do in terms of policy and enforcing policies and transforming, you know, the culture, well, the nation as a whole, in their regard. But it has a lot to do with grassroots work. And what I have found, even though these young people are getting the voice, getting platforms, and, you know, really speaking up, it's more on the ceremonial level. And I have no interest in that. We need to get down on the ground and get our hands dirty. And when I say dirty, I mean really get to work, because our kids' life is on the line. I don't think people can see it. Their lives are on the line, because if these young people are not prepared to lead, if they are not aware of the real issues, what is affecting them, most of them, they're coming to me crying because they don't have food to eat. It's not because they don't have food to eat, it's their mental capacity to withstand the stress. So now we have Dr. Webb, you know, she's overwhelmed with all of them because she's the only one that's really coming forward, you know, and there's so much of them now, you know, and we don't have the resources. You know, I came from a very disenfranchised background myself, under-resourced. My both parents never had a formal education. And I came to the United States on a full scholarship by the grace of God. It was one gentleman saw me in the political landscape, how I mobilize the young people and bring them together on campaigns and stuff. And he was like, you know what? I've always had the desire to empower young people. But if I invest in you, I will touch more lives than I'll ever be able to do on my own. And he sent me here. Today, nobody could never tell me that he's not my father. He was the former Minister of Arts and Multiculturalism in Trinidad and Tobago. His name is Dr. H. Lincoln Douglas. And he always, every time he addresses me, he tells people, this is my daughter and she is my legacy project. That is what he says. And I feel honored to know that someone can see a young girl from a disenfranchised background. I myself encountered period poverty, but I never knew it was such a thing. I thought it was just unique to me. You know, I thought it was just unique to me, but I didn't know it was a real thing. And I'm in Trinidad and Tobago. And to hear that this still exists in the rural areas in Trinidad and Tobago is so heartbreaking. So now we have this campaign where we really want to end period poverty. The young ambassadors, they're energized. We're actually having a conversation on Friday on the period poverty and the mental health implications. And it's a curation. The panel is very diverse from all different parts of the world. And, you know, they're having the conversation. We're trying to raise funds, not just to send sanitary napkins, but to educate. And, you know, I really know for sure, I'm telling you, I don't have the finances to go as of yet, but I'm telling you, Ms. Dean, today, we will be in Africa next year because we need to be on the ground. And maybe there's say that again?
I have no doubt you will.
I will. I would sacrifice, because it's necessary. I had a conversation, so both Felicia and I was on that conversation with the CEO of the Malawi Youth Council, and they want to partner with us. And this is as far as we go, because we are not here just to have these virtual conversations and then it ends there. No, these young people going back to these situations every day. What are we really doing? Are we just having the conversations because we can talk, because we can articulate the point, and then we go back home in our beds and we're sleeping? And these kids, they're suffering. It's so hard. It ticks me, because sometimes I complain about the genes that I don't have to go to the luncheon next week. And these people don't have food. They don't have beds to lay on. They don't have sanitary napkins. Condoms are free, but sanitary napkins, you have to pay for it. Sex is a choice. See, my period is not a choice. It's nature, you know? And that's why I don't like to show up like this, because I get very passionate and at it, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm angry, but sometimes when you sit down and you think about it, it pains me to know that there are so many people that can afford to at least adopt one child, one young person, just like Dr. Douglas did for me, invest into my life. I could have never seen the light. I always sit on my stair from my father's yard, and I would look at the planes flying above head. And I was always saying, I will one day be on one of those planes. I would always dream of it, and it was so difficult. When looking at me, nobody would believe the background that I came from. Very, extremely disenfranchised. I will walk over my friend's dead body most days because of gun violence to go to school. That trauma, that community trauma walked with me throughout my life. So much that I tend to be a recluse sometimes because of that trauma, but I'm coming out of it because of people like Dr. Webb, where they see potential and they decide to invest in it. But how much of us are out there that really wants to invest in the potential and the people that can actually create a shift in the dynamics in the youth space itself? Because they are the future. We need to have succession plans. We are not going to be in these positions forever. I literally placed a 23-year-old as the CEO of the organization, even though I'm way above her, because they need to see young people show up like this. They need to see themselves in people who are leading them. It's one thing to respect me from my level, but to know that you're 23 and you're standing as the CEO, addressing the world on behalf of a global organization that has 500, they want to ask you, you're 23. Well, you know about running an organization with 500 young people, but you know what? They're a family. They will go to war together. If something happens in Taiwan with Ambassador Inobu Haichi, they are going to Taiwan. They are going.
They will learn together. They will learn together.
They're going together because they understand, and that is what we try to cultivate. We are not in competition with each other. It's a global community, and it's time for us to come together. These young people, and we do have Caucasian ambassadors who believes in the vision, because there are Caucasian ambassadors. Our Caucasian ambassadors are under-resourced too. So not because they don't look like us means that they have it all. No, it's across the board. We are all human, and that's the narrative at Future Focus. We don't see color. We see human. We see humanity, and we see the need for a collective effort to bring about awareness and change. Because that's, if you're not aware of the real issues, you will not be able to initiate change.
Yeah, I think that's the thrust of the future. I think there's, people say different things about the happening of COVID, but I believe the world has to rebalance, and things like COVID happen to create that rebalancing. And we've had, and just today someone sent me something that said, all the great empires of the world have fallen eventually. And they fall because of their own internal rot. When they get too big for themselves, they become too powerful, and they only pay attention and look out for the top layer of society. They forget the other rungs of society. And eventually those levels rise up and take charge. And this is probably one of those areas, one of those eras that we're entering, where there has to be a dynamic change, a great shift. And so I think you're on the cusp of that change. And so it's very interesting to see. As usual, this is a conversation that could probably go on for another couple of hours, but we don't have any more time. And I do wish to thank you all so much for talking with me and providing our audience with information about this organization. Future Focus, Empowerment Institute International, defending the present while focusing on the future. Quite a challenge, and a great challenging future in the hands of the next generation. But we're all charged with the responsibility, as you say, to bring attention to the pressing issues before us. And so we will invite all those who can afford to supply any help that you want, to go to your website, which is futurefocusedemi.org, right? And make a donation, join, partner, whatever can be done to help this organization move on to the next level and to take our young people forward. And thank you all so much for being so passionate about what you're doing. And I'm sure you will have great success.
Thank you so much for having us.
Best wishes with your endeavors.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching us on Carib Nation. Our motto, remember here, is one people, one culture, one Caribbean, one nation. Until next time, I'm Doris Dean.